Welcome. We are so excited to have you back for the 10th episode of the Off Meta podcast. I'm Ganesh from Deck Check, and I'm Samurai Dancer. Just kidding. Samurai Dancer has allergies and he can't be here today, so it's just going to be me and our guest. Today, it is Complete Zombie Mayhem with our full deck tech on Ratadrabik of Urborg. Welcome to Off Meta, where the brews that are hot shoot their shot. In this show, we focus on the fascinating off-meta cEDH decks people haven't seen yet, like the absolutely wonderful Ratadrabik of Urborg. We'll have a fresh new episode every Friday by 6 p.m. Central. Off Meta is not responsible for the tournament results of decks and cards mentioned on Off Meta. If there's a brew you'd like us to take a look at, or you'd like to appear on the show itself, just let us know anytime in the Discord. Now, normally we would have a quick section on Off Meta news, but it just wouldn't be the same without Samurai Dancer, so instead we're going to skip right into the deck tech. And remember, if you like this sort of content, make sure to like and subscribe. Maybe send this to a friend. Thanks. Coming up on the Off Meta podcast.
So if you read back the first line of the text, there's a really cool word missing from that line, which makes the whole card broken. It says, whenever a legendary creature you control dies, it is missing the really cool word non-token.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
All right, we're here with ALP Senpai. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself, your name or username, how long you've been playing, what your favorite decks are, that sort of thing?
Sure. My Discord is ALP_Senpai. On Moxfield, it's a little psycho. Just got out of the military, so I have some free time. Been doing tournaments. Been playing Magic since 2020. That's right when COVID hit, which is really funny. Favorite decks are probably going to be my Ratadrabik deck and Locust God. My favorite thing to do in Magic is a turn 1 Winds of Change. Funniest ever. Funniest thing to do by far.
Turn 1 what?
Winds of Change. It is a
Winds of
one
Change.
red. It's a 1 red sorcery that says each player shuffles their hand into their library and draws that many cards.
Yes, okay, I do know what you're talking about. Okay, yeah, so you force mulligan, basically.
Basically, and it's the funniest thing to do because I can do it with no lands because I just, all right, cool, Simeon Spirit guy wins a chain.
Yeah, that is a pretty funny one. So what is your general location? Like, where are you based out of? I mean, I don't need your address or anything, just like what state?
Living in South Carolina, which is kind of not cool just because there's no place around here that does tournaments. If I want to go to a tournament, I have to drive 2 hours to Atlanta.
I see. So,
speaking of which, I will be going to the 10K at CCS in June, so hopefully I'll see you there.
In June, maybe. Yeah, I'll have to see if I can get up there. But okay, so I met you at Oklahoma City for GalaxyCon last weekend, so you must have had to fly out there to get there.
Yep, I flew. It was a short flight. It's like an hour.
Okay, very cool. Cool. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good wrap up of the intro. So before we get too deep into this, we should probably explain what Ratadrabik of Urborg actually is, what it does. So it is a 4 mana, so that's 2 generic, a white and a black. So it's an Orzhov, legendary creature, zombie wizard. It is a 3/3, and it's got vigilance and ward 2, and then it says other zombies you control have vigilance. And the most important line on it is this one. Whenever another legendary creature you control dies, create a token that's a copy of that creature, except it's not legendary, and it's a 2/2 black zombie in addition to its other colors and types. All right, so let's go ahead and get going with why play this deck. What makes this commander fun for you or give you a bit of advantage, that sort of thing?
Spite. Like legit. So I was playtesting this when it got spoiled. When I can't remember Dominar United came out, but I was super excited to see the card because it had a really cool. So if you read back the first line of the text, there's a
Hmm.
really cool word missing from that line, which makes the whole card broken. It says, whenever a legendary creature you control dies, it is missing the really cool word non-token.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing there that got me interested. I was like, wait a minute, I can do some fun things, right? So I
Yeah.
was at my LTS. I was talking to some people that played with there. Dude was saying that it was a trash card, like it doesn't do anything. It's just board wipe protection. And then I'm not gonna lie, I got petty. I got real petty, so I made a deck, and it was super casual. It was just, I'm gonna make a lot of Elish. I'm
A
gonna
lot of
make a lot of
Elish
shielders
Norn.
that hurt you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was big Orzhov Reanimator, right? Most of
Hmm.
the combo was buried alive into a living death,
I
and then
see. Okay.
I would just win off of that. Uh,
Oh, yeah. Bit like a Carrick style deck, a tiny bit, where you're
kind of Kirik was main boarded because it just made everything just be fast.
right.
Um, and Lord of the Rings came out, and then made him very broken just because all of the combo cards are 3 mana and less.
I
So once
see.
once those cards came out, I just decided to try to see if I could streamline and make the deck more efficient. And then still playing in my casual pods, I found that they couldn't do anything. So then I started playing with some cEDH people. They helped me get the deck pretty much to where it is now. So kudos to those guys out in Hawaii.
Very good. Okay, so one of the big reasons we're playing this deck is because Wizards forgot to put a line of very specific word on here, and it kind of breaks it up. And we'll talk about it in a second too. Okay, yeah, cool. I mean, in general, I can see a couple of reasons to play it already. Um, if you like sacrificing things, this is probably a good deck for you, and it's a zombie, which is just cool in general.
Yep. Plus the added benefit of not caring about graveyards. Well, depending on how you build it, but the
Right.
way I have mine built and geared is people will try to play like Graph Digger's Cage
Hmm.
and like Weathered Runestone, stuff that says you can't reanimate stuff, right? Or they'll try to
Right.
like exile my graveyard at instant speed, and then I just look at them with a blank expression because I don't care. Because
Okay.
I don't recur anything. I just kill it repeatedly.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I guess we'll get into that in a second here. In what is your game plan or general strategy for this deck? What are you doing in general?
In general, it is get Commander out
Hmm.
usually as early as possible because that's the most expensive thing that I'm going to try to cast in the deck
Right.
on average. And after that, it's get a Sack Outlet, a Tempt Creature, and a Payoff. Sometimes they're one and the same. Like, honestly, I should be trying to tutor for Blasting Station more often because then any of the temp creatures like Golem, Sam, or the Nazgul just kill everybody.
Hmm.
Um, there is a funny interaction that works with almost only my deck. I can't think of another deck where it's like really useful, and it is called Bitter Ordeal.
Ah, I see. I know this card.
Yeah, Future Sight was a fun set.
I like this card a lot, actually. But I haven't found a deck where it's been like crazy competitive yet.
So
Um,
here's the very easy line and very it's not hard to like imagine being able to do this. Turn one commander with like a land and Jewel Lotus, right?
okay, sure.
Turn two, cast Boromir. Get a mana crypt or get like a land and Soul Ring. Cast Boromir, and then people can't cast free spells. You're just there as a problem. You can infinitely sack Boromir, so no one can get rid of him, and it's just a hard time for people.
Right.
It gets back to your turn. You present loop of being able to sack Boromir infinitely, and
Hmm.
then you just cast Bitter Ordeal.
I see. Okay.
And you have
Yeah.
infinite Gravestorm triggers.
So before we get too deep, I think we should probably explain why Boromir, just Boromir, and
Sure.
like let's say just Golem would go infinite. Um, and how the ring tempting actually works with Ratadrabik. So I'll let you take it away.
So the tempt mechanic is actually very interesting because it is not a target. It
Hmm.
is the rules text on when the ring tempts you is you just choose a creature.
Right.
So they have to. So if anyone wants to react, they have to react in response to the ring tempting you. Afterwards, when you choose a creature, the first line of text is the ring tempting you is basically giving you an emblem, which Wizards has continually not been able to print anything to interact with emblems.
Hmm.
So the first line of text on the ring is your ring bearer is legendary and can't be blocked by creatures with greater power.
Yes.
Like honestly, that's the only thing we care about
Hmm.
is the fact that that is the first line of text that is on the ring emblem. Everything else is
Absolutely.
honestly just value.
Right. You don't care.
Like
Yeah.
yeah, it's good if you're like stuck and you need to draw cards because the second line is whenever your ring bearer attacks, draw then discard. When your
Right.
ring bearer becomes blocked by a creature, that creature's controller sacks at the end of combat. And whenever
Hmm.
your ring bearer deals combat damage to a player, each opponent loses 3 life.
Yeah.
I mean, those are all pretty good, but we only care about the first part. And I will mention that it transfers over to other ring bearers. So if you level up 4, you can put the ring on like another creature, and it'll still be at the 4, and it'll get all of the effects, not just one.
Right. Right.
Um, yeah. So to explain with Boromir how the line goes is, for example, Boromir's the easiest one to explain. He
Hmm.
has a sack ability on him. Sack Boromir. Creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. The ring tempts you. So since sacking is part of the cost, you trigger token generation on your commander, and then
Hmm.
you let that resolve first. So you make a Boromir token, and then his ability will resolve. All your stuff gains indestructible, and the ring tempts you, and you just choose Boromir as the ring bearer.
The Boromir token. Right.
Boromir token as the ring bearer. So he is once again legendary, except he's a 2/2,
Hmm.
and he's black.
Right.
Um, so after you present that loop with any of the other temp creatures, he's just the easiest one because he kills himself.
Right.
Um, if you get any drain that says when a creature enters, deal damage, or when a creature you control dies, you gain a life and your opponent loses a life. I prefer the ones that don't target opponents because Deflecting Swat is a card, and so is the One Ring.
Right. Right.
Yeah, Given Protection or Angel's Grace, right?
Hmm.
Um, Stuff like that. So I prefer just a blanket effect. Oh, each opponent just loses a life when a creature you control dies. And at that point, you just keep sacking, and then everyone dies.
Right. So our general plan is to try to just go off as quickly as possible, kind of rely that the table would have no idea what's going on.
So
Um,
even if they do know what's going on, they have a hard time interacting because we have some of the same. We have, I want to say, kind of the same upside as say in time, where we
mhm,
can just go above the stack and do another activation. And
right.
since we're not casting very many spells, well, a lot of our stuff doesn't get countered, especially because a lot of the spells we care about are creature spells.
And those are notoriously difficult to counter. It's one of the reasons that
There's like three
Dockside,
spells. Yeah,
yeah, it's like
there's like
Dockside and
three.
Oppo and a few other cards. There's such annoyances like Granite Bosher are such
Yep.
annoyances for players sometimes because they're just
Um,
difficult to deal with.
Pretty much. And we run those cards too. Obviously, you can't run Dockside because we're sad. But so we can't win as fast as other people. I've tried. Like I built a turbo version of the deck that was just all gas, no brakes.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, though, because we don't have like the draw outlets like blue does, or the just sheer mana generation that red does, we still have to play some of the stacks pieces like an early blind obedience or dauntless dismantler, should get
Mhm.
us there. Card draw is very hard for us as well, so I like having Skull Clamp as well as uh Trouble in Pairs. Trouble in Pairs has been a great card for those decks who aren't on blue. It is white Ristic Steady,
Right.
and I
Yeah.
will die on that hill.
Yeah.
I think blue farm decks could also run that as well.
Some do. Yeah. Some decks are actually on trouble in pairs. I personally am not, and I think a lot of the decks at GalaxyCon weren't. Um, but that's not to say it's a bad card. It will draw you a ton of cards, especially in mid-range pods.
Plus, you can also you can trigger it yourself, right? I've done that before. There was a Talion player with a Mystic Remora, so I casted the Trouble in Pairs first,
Hmm.
and then I casted like a 2-drop to trigger his Talion. And then because the Trouble in Pairs was already resolved, he drew, then I drew a card.
Right. Okay. Yeah,
You
that
can
makes
kind of
sense.
you can actually force it to work if you know how to do it.
Yeah, you can get some guaranteed draws off of it. Okay,
It's
so
definitely a parasitic card, but I feel like it's useful for decks that don't already have access to Ristic Steady.
right. So okay, I think we kind of get how this deck in general combos and wins. We will get um a bit more into the specifics soon, and we'll have a card by card as well. Okay, so why don't we talk about how exactly does this deck function in the early game for you?
In the early game, it's usually get out value pieces or mana. We'd love so I built the deck to have a lot of redundancy, so I don't have to keep like mid hands or I don't have to mulligan a lot. So we want to keep turn 1 to 2 commanders or turn 1 creatures that do things like turn 1
Hmm.
Drain's Magistrate, turn 1 Dauntless, turn 1 Archivist of Ogma, stuff like that. Or at the very least, we get mana to accelerate us so we can do multiple things on turn 2. Because unfortunately, being in black and white, we're always on catch up. Unless
Yeah,
shut everyone down immediately.
yeah, that makes
So
complete sense.
that's my usual game plan.
Okay. So yeah, then what are you doing in the mid game?
Mid game, as long as we have creatures and we have a draw engine, like either a
Hmm.
Timna, Trouble in Pairs, the One Ring, Archivist, we can swing because we really don't care if people block. Um, I will note that I've played a few games, like at the tournament and on spell table, where I just killed people with combat damage,
Okay. Yeah,
and it's very interesting because no one expects it.
yeah, I wouldn't either.
The way we kill people with combat damage is we have a very unassuming attacker, like a carrion feeder or a Bartholomew. Carrion feeder can't block, so it just makes sense that I just want to get in damage with it anyway. And then Bartholomew is just a 2-1, so they're thinking he's just trying to, reduce, ad nos potentially.
Right.
And then at that point, once no blockers are declared, we just sack one of the tempt creatures infinitely and then just beam them out of the game.
Yeah, no one
Because
expects the Spanish
Inquisition,
vampire.
especially with Bartholomew. Yeah, that's the running meme. Um, it's very funny that no one expects combat damage. It's also very possible. Like the deck is very flexible in what it can do because I have Agatha Soul Cauldron.
Yeah.
It's like see how like in depth can I get at the moment, or did you how in depth did you want me to get in the moment at like how the deck can function?
Well, we will go card for card in a little bit. But we can just go over generally like how it functions in the mid game. So we're going for combat, either a combo out or we're going for combat damage in the mid game, is what you're saying, basically, right? Try to develop some. Once we've developed our value engines, is when we go for a win.
Yeah, we really only the value engine is really just to get to the combo because the
Right.
combos are very simple and low CMC. That if
Hmm.
it goes past turn 5, we could just untap and just cast a single creature, win the game. It's not very hard. Um, the mid game is because we haven't drawn the combo piece and we're just at this point just pressuring the life totals. Uh, and then possibly having attack triggers that draws cards. So, and if we can cast more stuff to stop other people from winning the game, that also helps. That's why we have thing. I currently have Drana and Lindvala. We have Doorkeeper Throw to stop ETB triggers.
Hmm.
We do the Graph Diggers to stop Search and Kinnan, so it stops Sate, as well as Op Agent. We don't have a lot of stacks pieces because we don't want to bog down the deck with just preventing win, but
Right.
not having an ability to win. But we have what the stacks pieces we do have in there give us the window we need to win the game.
That makes complete sense. Okay. Okay. So then how does this deck function in the late game?
Late game, if it's gotten to the late game, we are in a tight spot. I
Yeah.
don't. I mean, depends on what you define as late game. Like some people say, like turn 5 is late game. I've been in situations where it's been like turn 12, and all I've drawn for the past 5 turns is lands.
Yeah.
Like I have win in hand, but I need a single card, and I have no way to draw any cards because I don't have One Ring, I don't have Trouble in Pairs, I don't have like a Value Skull Clamp. I just have nothing to draw. My Espresso has been killed already.
Hmm.
Bowmaster's been killed, so we're just chilling. That's worst case scenario. Best case scenario is we just keep outpacing people with creatures and then lock down the board more.
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, it seems like a lot of times in the late game, you will kind of just run out of gas.
I will say that Ratadrabik loves the long game personally because that just gives us opportunity to draw more cards.
That's
The
fair.
more cards, the more cards we can draw, the scarier we are. Like if we had blue, oh, it'd be a horrible time.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, that definitely makes sense. What would you say are this deck's strengths?
Being creature based and being able to all of our interaction is at instant speed, so you can
Hmm.
try to. So the commander has ward, which almost no one pays because they can't. A lot of the removal in cEDH is very efficient, and you're trying to pay as little as possible.
Right.
So no one's going to leave up 2 mana specifically to target my commander, which does nothing on board. It doesn't affect the game. It doesn't present threat. It is a 3/3 blocker and attacker.
Right.
3 damage people will take. Just says, oh, can't swing a hit with Timna. And it doesn't do anything, right? It's not threatening, which is fair. Most of the times I'll cast my commander and I won't be doing anything. The problem is the deck will just win out of nowhere. I'll untap and only have my commander on board, and then I'll cast 2 spells and just win the game.
Yeah.
And both of them will be creatures. Cool, I cast this temp creature, and I'll cast this sack outlet. You all die.
Yeah. I can see that. Okay. And what would you say are some of the weaknesses for this deck? I think we've talked a little bit about how if you don't develop value engines, you can kind of just fall behind. But there
Yeah.
any other big weaknesses that you could think of? Like maybe if your commander gets killed once or twice, does that make things way more difficult for you?
The commander dying does make it difficult, but the weak points is lack of interaction. Like I
Hmm.
said, we're not a police deck,
Right.
so our removal is used sparingly, and our instant speed creatures are used sparingly. Right, I'm not going to use a touch the spirit realm just because someone's getting value. I'll use a touch because someone's trying to win the game. Right, I'm not going to waste mana to cast a value creature. If I'm scared of blue farm doing something, I will cast something, leave up 2 mana, and then either leave up mana for a instant speed op agent,
Hmm.
doorkeeper throw because dockside is a thing, and so is that Zorkel combo. So is a bowmaster. So uh we have very little in which we can interact with players. So
Right.
that's like just not having counter spells, not being able to say no to people,
Hmm.
not being able to like legit stop combos except with very specific cards. Kind of is what I feel the downside. Also said it before, but card draw. I promise you, I've died to three things. It has been lack of card draw, or for so opponents having more card draw, dockside, and tutoring. That's it. Those three things.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense.
When
Yeah.
you play in Blue Farm, you understand the most because you play all of those cards. I mean, your game plan is to turn one Ristic Study or turn
Yeah,
one
I haven't
Wonder.
seen a turn one Ristic study in a long time, but if I can get it, yeah, you bet I'm slamming it.
Right. So like a Multa 3 for you is like turn one Ristic Study and you're still good, right? As long as no one like counters it, which
Yeah,
is hard
like
to counter. And then yeah, you can mold down to 3 with a Ristic Study and you'll be completely fine. Or you can mold down to like 4 with a fish and you'll be good.
yeah.
I can't do that. If I go past 6, if I mold down to 5, we're in a horrible spot unless I just draw the nuts.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely see that. Okay. So what are some tips you would like to give players that are new to Ratadrabik? Maybe some like so we talked about how the combos kind of work, but is there anything that like isn't really apparent at first glance? Some like weird interactions you might want to put out?
Oh, 100%. I've actually so I put in Mirage Mirror fairly recently,
Hmm.
but that could also be used as a pilot and a combo piece and or protection piece, as opposed to like its just usual value of oh, I'm a copy your One Ring or I'm a copy your Six Steady. You know,
Right.
obvious things that you'd want to copy, right? But if
Right.
you're missing a sack outlet and you just need death triggers, you could copy one of the temp creatures you have and then just let the original creature die and then
Right.
start that combo. And then if someone tries to, for example, you cast Boromir, tries to, let's say, kill your Boromir on your upkeep. You can just pay to copy Boromir, legend roll happens, regular Boromir dies, you
Then
can
you
let
just
it happen. Yeah.
yeah.
And then you just have like you have a spare tempt trigger basically.
Right. Right. Okay, I
So there's
definitely can see that. Um
Agatha's Soul Cauldron is
yes.
a very flexible card. So here's something I got to do recently. It was so satisfying. So the Nazgul has an ETB trigger of the ring tempts you, and whenever the ring tempts you, put a 1/1 counter on each wraith you control,
Mhm.
which includes itself. So
Right.
Agatha Soul Cauldron says any creature with a 1/1 counter on it that you control has activated abilities of all creatures under Agatha Soul Cauldron.
Mhm.
So I can turn my uh, Nazguls into sack outlets for themselves.
How?
I eat one of the sack outlet creatures I have. Like I can eat a carrion feeder. I can
Uh-huh.
eat a Mirror. I can eat a Bartholomew if it's already dead. I can eat a Boromir because you exile Boromir under Agatha's. Now my Nazgul with a 1/1 counter on it has the sack tempt.
I see. Okay, this that makes complete sense actually. Oh, and you're running two Nazgul.
Did I had like 5 in there, but I've cut them down to make room for other stuff. Those
Mhm.
are honestly my more flex spots. But the real cool thing is when you eat a ranger captain,
Ah,
because you
yes.
can just silence everybody on the turns, and at that point, you may not be able to win immediately. However, comma, you can just say no one's winning.
Yes, this is something that Tyam does too, yeah. I
You
can
can
yeah.
just say, beginning of your upkeep, Ranger Captain. And then beginning of your upkeep, Ranger Captain. You just keep doing that until it gets back to your turn, and then you can still Ranger Captain. And then hopefully you can tutor, or you can cast the creature you need to just drain everybody. But that is a very interesting interaction that I found. Originally, it wasn't in there for that purpose. It was to oh, you counter my Viziers here. I'll eat it and then put the 1/1 counter on my commander so I can turn my commander sack outlet. Because
Right.
that was one of the biggest things that was the biggest complaint I had was that if he was a sack outlet, he would be perfect. But this is a magical Christmas land, so we make do with what we got. And Agatha's is a powerhouse because it also acts as a protection against breach lines.
Yes.
No
Yes.
one's gonna no one's gonna willingly just go into a breach without
Dealing with this
with
first
the Agatha side. They'll
somehow.
be like, well, now I have to play carefully.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Okay.
Plus if they screw up and they pitch a ranger captain, they stack it to stop someone else from running. I'm like, oh, cool, that's great. I now have ranger captain,
Yes.
and I can do that to any creature. Preferably though the Nazgul, because that's the one where I don't have to keep trying to put a 1/1 counter on it. But
Mhm.
yeah, I can do it to any of my creatures. I just need to die. Um, Another interaction that I think people will, if anyone does want to play Ratadrabik, it is very easy to win with state-based action.
Oh god.
Yeah, that was something that I realized was super easy. So you
How do you
don't need a sack outlet. You could just be the sack outlet.
Okay.
So I will explain. It only works Golem and Sam. Um, so you can entomb Golem and put him back to hand. You know, if
Mm,
you need to, tutor for a creature.
right.
But if he's already out, you can sack him to, let's say, you don't have a sack outlet, but you have Phyrexian Tower. You eat him to Phyrexian Tower, make the 2 black, use the
Uh-huh.
black to sack the token to the one in the graveyard, put the original one back in hand, you still have a token one. And then you can just cast the original Golem. And then if you have a drain out, everyone dies by state-based actions because the layers go. There are 2 legendary creatures with the same name. You have to sacrifice one of them. You sack the token. Uh, Token makes you tempt it. It is legendary once again. Repeat this process, and you can stop the combo at any time because you just choose a different creature as the ring bearer.
I see. So these would still like people would still be able to at least respond to the triggers of Ratadrabik. But
Yes,
yeah, but
it's
they
hard. It's hard.
yeah. So this is basically a way for you to uh win without needing a sacrifice outlet. You'll just this is really cool actually. Uh
Yeah, so it's even easier to do with Sam because when he dies, he puts a permanent that was put into your graveyard from the battlefield this turn back into your hand. So you can just literally eat him, make a token. The token puts Sam back in your hand, and then you just recast him. I've also had the interaction to have a blind obedience and a lotus petal. You could just do that.
mhm.
You could just infinitely extort people to death
Right.
because if you have a sack out, you just sack Sam, put the lotus spell back in hand, cast, repeat.
This might be one of the more advanced like combos in general we've had on the show. Um I guess if anyone out there is listening and they don't understand exactly how this all works, you could try to leave a comment on the YouTube video or join the Discord that we've got. If you have some more questions, I can try to
You can
help.
also just message me directly on Discord. I'll answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll answer any questions.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah, I think that's pretty good for our section on like tips for new players. All right. And next up is our section on underrated slash overlooked cards, and we did just talk about some. So like we did talk about Soul Cauldron. We did talk about Sam and Gollum. Was there anything else in here that you felt was like really underrated that people might
Bitter
overlook?
Ordeal. No one ever looks at Bitter Ordeal. No one's played that card. Honestly, it's not that great of a card. But in this deck specifically, it is a powerhouse because there's only like 2 spells that stop it. And one of them you need to cast 3 spells in order to make it free. So unless someone's holding up 2 and 2 blue, you just cast this one time and then everyone's just loses the game.
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're having some sort of infinite sacrifice with Boromir or something, and then we just pay 3 mana for Bitter Ordeal, and everyone's library is just gone.
Yep. It doesn't have to specifically be Boromir as long as you have a loop of just murdering stuff.
Right.
Uh, you can you can just do that.
Uh,
Um,
does Gravestorm count tokens too? Those are permanent, or those are right? Those are
yes, it
permanent.
does.
Okay.
Yep, tokens go to the graveyard, which is the whole reason why it works. I had to look up the ruling specifically because of that, but it does work how we want it to.
And you do have Lotho, so that is relevant in general.
Lotho is there for value, just
Right.
because people are going to be casting more spells than us usually. So we
Hmm.
just generate mana. I will say another underrated card is Comball, the new one from Thunder Junction.
So this is
Um,
gonna kind of also make you those treasures.
it will make me so. For example, realistic scenario, we have Comball. It's turn 3. You know, we play him on curve because it's not going well for us.
Yeah.
And then there's someone docksides. They don't win, but they present fear from everyone, right?
Hmm.
They dockside. We make that many tap treasures. Granted, they're tapped, but they we still make them. So we make like 5, right? Then there's a
Right.
Tivit player. He casts Tivit, and I'm like, I'm all good with it. How many tokens are you making? Because I'm gonna make that many. And then
Right.
if they give him clues, like I'll give him clues because I want clues. That gives me card draw.
Hmm.
So the copying of the tokens triggers only once per turn, but the life loss and life gain does not trigger once per turn. That can trigger continuously. So he is a 2/4 3 mana legendary value piece as well as a win con. So not
Right.
only does he block Timna, he survives Bolt. If we don't have our commander out at the time, we can cast him early and then use him to generate value. So other decks, including Blue Farm, play Lotho. We can play that into Lotho, and then we just ping him double when he triggers his Lotho, and then we just don't take any damage whatsoever. Every time someone casts their second spell, they make a treasure, we make a treasure.
Right. Right. That definitely makes a lot of sense, actually. Um. Okay. Uh. Talk to me about. Let's see. There was another card. Talk to me about Lively Dirge.
Oh, that is a card that I recently put in for before the tournament. And I really like the card
Hmm.
because we are usually missing one creature, and it doesn't target, so you can entomb and then reanimate up to 2 creatures. So you can entomb the creature you can reanimate the creature you entombed for. So if we're in a hard spot, we can get Yawgmoth because it's draw and sack outlet. Um, if we have other things in hand to win, we can just get Boromir. It really depends on what's in our hand, but we can. It's a very flexible um, tutor. Plus, if we just need to reanimate 2 creatures or a creature in the grave, we could just do that instead of having to search.
Yeah, so for those listening at home, Lively Dirge is a 1 and a black sorcery with spree, so you can pay any amount of additional costs. If you pay 1 extra mana, you search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, and shuffle. And if you pay additionally another 2 mana, you can return up to 2 creature cards with total mana 4 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Now, this, if you pay 5 into it, basically you entomb 1 card, and then you can reanimate 2 things, basically, or one bigger thing that's 3 or more. And apparently that's all we really need. I mean, it makes sense. Like a lot of our things that just go infinite, like all the ring tempters, like Gollum and Samwise, um, and Boromir, they're all kind of in that 2 to 3 mana range.
Yep, and then our sack outlets are 1 to 2 mana as far as
Hmm.
creatures go. We have
Yeah,
Carrion Feeder. We have the only 4 CMC sack outlet we have is Yawgmoth. So creature
right,
sack outlets are Carrion Feeder, Seer, and Boromir for himself, and then Bartholomew.
right.
So if one
Okay.
of those is in the grave for whatever reason, we like, cool, I'll entomb this either this tempt creature or I'll entomb this payoff, and then I'll reanimate both sack outlet, uh, any combination of the two.
Okay. All right. So I think let's go ahead and go to our card by card. And I will go a little faster here, but I will go ahead and read them out just for those listening on Spotify, so they know what's going on. So starting off, we have Walking Ballista. Now I'm sure many people are familiar with that, but it's a XX casting cost. So you have to pay double into it, and then you get X +1/+1 counters on it. So if you pay 4 mana, it'll have 2. And then you can pay 4 mana, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and then it has remove a +1/+1 counter from it, and it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Why is this in the deck?
Because it also wins with the Nazgul.
Okay.
So if you have a
Oh.
sack outlet and you have a
Mhm.
Nazgul, you can eat the Walking Ballista,
Mhm.
and then you sack the Nazgul after. So the Nazgul enters with a 1/1 counter.
Mhm.
You can ping someone, remove the 1/1 counter, and then just sack the Nazgul. It'll ETB, get another 1/1 counter, ping someone, sack the Nazgul again.
So this is with Soul Cauldron, you're saying, right?
Yep. This is a line with Soul Cauldron. There are also ways to make infinite mana in the deck.
Mhm.
With, like I explained before, the Lotus Petal and the Sam. Um, you can also make infinite mana with a Sack Outlet and Relic of Legends. Yes, I forgot to mention that is also an underrated card. Relic of Legends is a 3 mana artifact that taps a legendary creature for mana. It does not need haste. You can just force tap it, kind of like Springleaf Drum. So when
Yes.
you stack a temp creature and it comes back untapped and then becomes legendary, you can then tap it for mana, sack it, repeat this process, make infinite mana. So if we can make infinite mana, we can just walk in Ballista like everyone else.
That makes complete sense. Okay. Cool. Okay, so yeah, so that's why Walking Bush is in the deck. Next up, we have Carrion Feeder, 1 black for a 1/1 zombie, can't block, sack a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on it. I guess there's not too much to say here. It's sacrifice outlet for your combos.
Ooh, that
Um,
actually works with walk-in Ballista
oh, right,
because it
that's
puts the counters
true.
on themselves. If we just have him and Bartholomew both put 1/1 counters on themselves. So if
Hmm.
we can just have like a temp creature, like a regular temp creature in the Carrion Feeder, we just do that and then everyone just dies.
That's right, yeah, so you wouldn't need to do. This is also very similar to Nazgul, where you have an infinite sack loop going, and then you're just going to end up with an infinitely large Carrion Feeder. Use Soul Cauldron, put a counter on him, or actually, you don't even need to do that. You can just Soul Cauldron, exile Ballista, and then you win the game.
Yep, and if other people play Ballista, which most of them do, like Kinnan, I know some blue farmless play it. We could just act like we're value exiling their Ballista so they can't, kill us, and then we
Right,
use it as a win con.
right. Okay, very cool. Next up is S for Sentinel. Don't need to go. This is a super stable 1 white mana for a 1/1 artifact human soldier. Whenever an opponent casts their first non creature spell each turn, draw a card unless they pay X, where X is S for Sentinel's power. Just very good draw engine in general.
Yep.
Uh, yeah, not too much to say there. Uh, Viscera Seer, 1 black for a 1/1 vampire wizard, sacrifice creature, scry 1. Yep, I mean, not too much to say there either.
So I
It's.
will say about Viserys here, it is very funny when you look at. We'll get to the enchantments in a minute, um, but the Call of the Ring, it's very helpful with that if you can infinitely sack on like for your turn or turn doesn't matter because you can scry what you need to the top and then draw it with the Call of the Ring because it trigger whenever you get tempted, and then you just draw
I
what you need. You don't
see.
have to. Yeah, you don't have to draw every time. You can choose. So it's very helpful to scry what you need to the top. Like I need rock, and then this thing that says I don't die.
Right. Okay, that's actually a really cool interaction.
I keep
Um,
forgetting a lot of these lines because there's actually a lot you could do. You just
mhm.
need to be able to be flexible in what you're trying to do because other people try, they'll attempt to see the line, and you could go a completely different route.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I didn't. That's crazy. I wouldn't have seen this. So for those that are kind of lost as to what's going on, yeah, the series Sacrifice Crusader Scry one. There's a card called Call of the Ring. It's from Lord of the Rings, the set, obviously. One in a black enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, the ring tempts you, and whenever you choose a creature as your ring bearer, you may pay 2 life. If you do, draw a card. Now, the reason this is so good is because most of this deck's combos are around these like legendary ring tempting kind of things. So like um say Boromir is probably the easiest example, right? Whenever you sacrifice him, the ring will tempt you, and you put that trigger underneath your Ratadrabik trigger, so you get a new Boromir first. Um, well, I guess actually, Boromir is a bad example for this. Let's say Gollum, right? Gollum, when he leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you. You'll get your scry. You can look at the top card whether you want it or not, and if you don't like it, you can scry it away, and then you can pay 2 life because you have to choose something as your ring bearer, and then you just draw the card that you want.
You don't even have to pay the 2 life. You could just keep scrying. The pay is a main,
Oh, I see.
so
So
you don't have
yeah,
to kill yourself. You can just keep scrying and then see exactly what you want and then draw it.
right. So you can kind of like go through and stack your deck. No, not exactly, but like you can draw exactly the cards that you want from like 30 life, and then you'll end up with like 10 like crazy cards like silence and you know all this other stuff.
Pretty much. It's a good politicking tool if you have like your commander Vasir in the Call of the Ring and you want to cast Sam at instant speed in response to someone doing anything to like say they're casting a Grand Abolisher. You could
Hmm.
politic be like, I can attempt to draw something, and then you could potentially just win on the spot,
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
especially if you have an emergent zone.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Uh, cool. So next up, we have Archivist of Ogma. 1 and a white for a 2/2 halfling cleric with flash. Whenever an opponent searches their library, you gain a life and draw a card. Very self-explanatory. Just a good draw engine. It's a card I used to play in Blue Farm, but I got cut a while ago. But
Interesting.
still, sorry.
I say that's interesting that you would cut it.
There's some really efficient creatures. I think what I swapped this out for was Fairy Mastermind. Um, but it's pretty close. Like both of those cards like are very similar in power level. The only reason I swapped out Fairy Mind over it is because I feel like it can trigger more in mid range games, and it doesn't get shut off by Op Agent. So
This is also fair. However, because we're not in blue, we don't have that option.
right. Yes, yeah. Not faulting you for this one. No, but it's still really good. When I played with it, I was happy with the card. Um, yeah. So next up is Bartolomeu del Presidio. White and a black, Vampire Knight, 2/1. Sacrifice another creature or artifact. Put a +1/+1 counter on him. Um, this is kind of the same thing as Carrion Feeder, right? Basically the same card in your deck. Yeah, I can't think of any major differences other than this is legendary. Actually, how does that affect things?
Makes it a lot easier to keep them around. Plus, if there's a way I can have two Bartholomew's out, for example, like I just return him with like a Sam or some kind of reanimate effect,
Hmm.
I can swing at two people and kill them.
Okay. Okay. All right. So next up, we have Dauntless Dismantler. We talked about this a little earlier. This is a 1/4, 1 and a white human artificer that's going to make artifacts our opponent's control enter the battlefield tapped, and then we can pay XX white, sacrifice it, destroy each artifact with mana value X. So basically, this will kill people's treasures when we want it to.
Yep. I can also eat this to a soul cauldron and give it to any one of my creatures that I need,
Mhm.
even if it's like a temp creature. But I hate to keep harping on the Nazgul, but if I have a Nazgul, I can continuously just have the no one gets to have treasures.
Right, right, because you can sacrifice it to itself, and then it'll just come back.
Yep, and it comes back with a 1/1 counter, so I don't have to try to put a 1/1 counter on it.
Ah, that's kinda nasty, okay.
You see
Okay.
how Soul Cauldron in this deck is actually pretty good.
Yeah, yeah, I'm seeing that. Alright. Next up is Doorkeeper Thrall. This is a new one, 1 and a white for flash flying 1/2 Thrall. Artifacts and creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So this is just gonna shut off like Thorhol, Dockside. Uh,
The One Ring
that's right, the One Ring.
shuts off Imp Recruiter, shuts off Recruiter of the Guard, shuts
Yes,
off Bowmaster trigger.
one Bowmaster trigger. But yeah, yeah,
I will say, I know a lot of people will be wondering, why do I have a creature that shuts off ETBs when I have ETB win cons? It's because we have Boromir and Gollum, which are basically leave the battlefield triggers.
right.
Also, since we're in a sack heavy deck, I can literally sack him whenever I want to if I'm trying to go for the win.
That makes complete sense. Yeah. Okay, so next up is Draenith Magistrate, 1 and a white for a 1/3 human wizard. This is an infamous card in not only cEDH, but Commander as a whole, because it is just so unfun and also just
It's
so good.
a great card,
Um,
so his breach doesn't happen.
yeah, like it's kind of crazy. I mean, the worst thing it does is shut off. It says your opponents can't even cast their commanders. So, like, yeah. I mean, it turns off
Stops an
Breach
early
too, but
Timna. Yeah, stops an early
yeah,
Timna, stops a Pivot from coming out, stops an early
right,
Quorum,
right.
stops Mihada.
Yeah. Stops a lot of things. It even stops Rogsai.
Yep, can't cast Roger.
Nope. Okay. Next up is Elias Ilkor, Sadistic Pilgrim. Orzov, so white and a black for a 2/2 legendary. Phyrexian Core Cleric. Oh, it's a weird creature type. But Death Touch. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under control, you gain a life. Whenever another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. And it's looking like we don't really care too much about the gain life, but we are interested in the ability to just kill people.
I will say the game life does come in to play
Hmm.
a few times because recently I was playing in the second tournament for the other Time Twister. I went down to 3 life and I just balls to the walled it with a Yawgmoth to try to draw, and I drew the Elias, and I went down to
Nice.
3. So I cast him, and then because of the life gain, I was able to continuously kill people without killing myself.
Very nice. Okay.
So sometimes the life gain does matter. The reason why he's in here mostly is because he is a 2 mana payoff. And he's legendary. So he's a great blocker. No one's going to swing into a Death Toucher. And even if they do and he dies, I will just have another one.
Yeah. Your commander's going to make another one. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. Okay.
And if worst comes to worst, I can Chromox him for my colors.
Right. Right.
It feels bad, but sometimes we gotta do some things.
Yeah. That makes sense. Next up is Gollum, Patient Plotter. 1 and a black for a 3/1 legendary halfling horror. When it leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you, and then you can pay black and sacrifice a creature, return it from your graveyard to your hand. Activate this ability only as a sorcery. Yeah, so we talked about this before. This is one of the combo wins in the deck because whenever this would die or get sacrificed or something, you will get a token of it, and then you can choose the token to be your ring bearer and make it legendary, and then you can kind of repeat this little loop for infinite ETB triggers, infinite death triggers.
Right.
Yeah,
However, I would invite you to reread that first line of text and see if you see anything that is very interesting.
when it leaves the battlefield, the ring tempts you.
You're getting closer.
Gollum, Patient Plotter leaves the battlefield, the rings tempts you.
What also counts as leaving the battlefield?
Oh, is it legendary rule?
No, it's the fact that if you exile Golem, I'll have a temp trigger.
Oh, okay. So if this gets pathed or something,
I get a temp trigger, so yeah.
you get a
That's
trick.
the other cool part is like, oh no, you path my token. I will have another temp trigger.
I see. Okay.
I guess
Okay.
I'll just tempt this Nazgul, this other value creature. Like I guess I'll tempt this Ranger Captain. Now I can have two Ranger Captains. Or I'll tempt this opposition agent. Or I'll tempt this Bowmaster. Any of my value non-legendary creatures I will tempt because why not?
Okay. So yeah, this card is actually a lot stronger than it looks at first glance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
The whole leaves the battlefield is the best part.
Yeah.
Because dying, getting exiled, return to hand, like if they Psych Rift or if they like Chain of Vapor, and I'm like, cool, cool, cool. I still get a 10 trigger.
Yes. Okay. That's pretty strong, actually. All right. Next up, Grand Abolisher, white for Human Cleric. This is silence on a stick. During your
Basically.
turn, your opponents can't cast spells, activate abilities of artifacts, creatures, enchantments. We all know what this does. Next up is Lotho, which we talked about. White and a black for a legendary halfling rogue. 2/1. Whenever your player casts their second spell each turn, you lose 1 life and make a treasure token. Fairly simple. Don't need to spend too much time on it. Orcish Bowmaster, 1 and a black, flash, 1/1. When it ETBs or whenever an opponent draws a card except the first one, you deal damage to any target and you mass orcs 1. I'm sure we all know what this card does.
Except it's also a win con in the deck.
Oh, yeah, slow me down here. What does this do?
Well, the next card after Bowmasters is part of the win con.
Okay. Yeah, why don't you let us know how this Samwise works?
So Sam is a 1 and a white legendary creature halfling peasant with flash. He has a 2/1. When he
Mhm.
ETBs, choose up to 1 target permanent card in your graveyard that was put there for the battlefield this turn. Return it to your hand, then the ring tempts you. So if we have a mid setup where it's not optimal, we'll probably have a Relic of Legends or even a Lotus Petal. We can make infinite mana with a sack outlet and then keep sacking Orcish Bowmasters and then put it back to hand and then recast it for the ETB trigger. And then just kill
Right.
everyone with pings.
Right. Okay, that definitely makes a lot of sense.
It
All right.
requires a little bit of setup, but no one's going to be able to see it coming
Yeah, I
until
would.
it's already happens. And at that point, you present loop.
Right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this Sam and Golem are actually really strong cards in this deck, and it's not something I really picked up on until we explored it a bit more. It's pretty cool.
There's a lot of things that require a little bit of creativity and imagination to do when you're
Hmm.
not in the best colors, which is personally why I like playing non-meta.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know,
That.
uh, do like the deck isn't already pre-built. You know, you don't have to think about your win lines. You know exactly what you're trying to do to win because no one had to. You didn't have to come up with it yourself. It's like for it not trying to shit on Blue Farm, but for example, Blue Farm. Everyone knows how Blue Farm wins. It's either Thoracle or Breach.
Right.
It's not a hard combo to do. It's not hard to pull off. You cast Breach, you cast Blindside Diamond, you have Brain Freeze, and
I
then you
will. Yeah, that's true. I will let you know though on my top 16 game on for the Duel for Duels. I won
yeah
with Emil, and then I spun Kinnan until I hit Bowmaster.
yeah well yeah. If you have a meal, then wait. How do you do a meal with Blue Farm if you don't if your sand's green?
You should be asking about Kinnan too.
Yeah, I was about to get. Oh, you have two copy effects. You copied someone else's Emil and Kinnan with a dot with a Phyrexian Metamorph and a Fimage.
Close, but no, that's not what I did.
Did
I
you
resolved
Gilded Drake them?
no. I've resolved the Toxic Deluge, and those things were just all on the board. And then I Final Fortune, and then I played out a Meme Betrayal.
Nice. Okay. I mean, cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
had
creative way to
to.
get there.
Yeah, because my breach was shut off. Because there was a. I mean, I guess once the toxic was resolved, I could have gone for it. But anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
But without being in the best deck in the format and having to come up with your own win cons, especially through Rhystic Studies and Mystic Remoras and Talions everywhere. Everyone's got counter spells. Niche ways like this that you can consistently do every game because your main game plan is vague enough to work.
Hmm.
And I say that because the game plan is to get a temp creature and kill it.
Right.
After that, it's like, which one of these 12 different ways to win do I want to win?
Yeah.
So it's stuff like that that makes me like playing this deck and uh, makes me think it can hang with the other cEDH decks, which apparently it can. I did about as well as other blue farm decks and Kenrith and Sasay decks.
Yeah. Very good, by the way. Um, yeah. Okay. So yeah. So I guess that'll finish us up with Samwise the Stout-Hearted. Next up, we have Zulaport Cutthroat. This is just a drain outlet. One
Yep.
mana block for a 1/1. Whenever it or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. You gain a life.
Yep.
Uh,
The only reason why we have this instead of like a Corpse Knight or Cruel Elephant is because it's a colorless and a black and not a white and a black, so it's less pip heavy.
Also, it doesn't target.
It
So
does not target.
yeah, that's pretty important, right? 'Cause for one ring protection and stuff.
It also doesn't trigger off of ETBs, so if we have a doorkeeper, we need to keep it around. That's another reason.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay. Next up is Boromir, Warden of the Tower, which we already talked about. 2 and a white for a 3/3 vigilance. If an opponent would cast a spell, or if they cast a spell and no mana was spent to cast it, you counter it. And then if you sacrifice it, creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. And then the most important thing for this deck is that the ring tempts you.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we talked enough about Boromir.
Yeah. It's one of the best cards in the deck, or like that I can tell.
Honestly, it's one
Um,
of the best cards that's been printed in a hot minute.
yeah. Overall, it's just a good card.
Yeah,
And
it's a 3/3 with vigilance for
yeah,
3. And it's not
yeah,
2 white, it's just 2 colorless and a white. And its stacks ability is nothing to shake a stick at because it only turns off your opponents.
right, right. And you can even, if you absolutely have to, you can get rid of Boromir.
I've actually had interactions where someone politicked with me to get rid of my Boromir,
Hmm.
but I had my commander out, so I was like, "You have this split-second window where there is no Boromir to interact.
I was thinking that, yeah, because like you can be like, okay, I'll sacrifice Boromir, um,
You
and
may
now I
now
have a
respond."
Ratadrabik trigger. But while Boromir's gone, you can play your Force of Will, and then Boromir's coming right back.
Yeah, so I politicked so I could keep because I had the ability to just keep Boromir, um, and I showed. I mean, because I had to show the step by step, triggers on the stack and all this other stuff to explain to them. I will just keep having a Boromir, so you have now. You can't just ask me to kill Boromir and him to not come back so you can cast things. No, if you want to save the game, you will counter his spell right now.
That makes sense. Okay. Cool. So next up, we have Cabal Profiteering Mirror. We've talked about this card already. One white black for a 2/4 legendary human advisor. Whenever one or more tokens enter the battlefield under your opponent's control, for each of them, you create a tap token that's a copy of it. The ability triggers only once each turn, and then one or more tokens ETB under your control. Each opponent loses a life, and you gain a life. Now, the first ability is gated to once a turn, and we talked about how the second one is not. So he is also um, an infinite outlet if you're making tokens, which of course in this deck, that's kind of what we're all about, making those legendary tokens.
Yep.
All right, next up is Nazgul, 2 and a black, Death Touch, Wraith Knight. 1/2, whenever Nazgul enters the battlefield, the ring tempts you, and whenever the ring tempts you, put a +1/+1 counter on each Wraith you control, and a deck can have up to 9 cards named Nazgul, which is why you have 2 instead of 1.
Yes, I know a lot of. I've seen other people try to build this deck, and they like having 9 Nazguls.
Hmm.
Um, Kudos to them for consistency. But what are you going to do? This is my personal opinion. Other people can build the deck however they want, but I'm of the mind of what happens when you just have like mana crypt land and like 5 Nazgul. Like
Yeah,
I
you only need.
understand, slow
Yeah.
mid range, like in a casual setting, that would be a great hand. You're like, cool, I'll just Nazgul every turn. Um,
Right.
but in a cEDH format, you need a lot more flexibility, and consistency is key, which is
Oh,
why we're running 2 of them.
right. Okay. Yeah, we talked about how this combo's already because you can make your Nazgul's legendary and that sort of thing. So, yeah. Next up is Op Agent. I think we can just go
Yeah,
like skip over
it's
that.
the bane of the format.
Yeah, it's very strong. It's basically if they search, you get their search and you get their card and you see their hand at flash speed. Kind of
You can
nuts,
also
actually.
control. You also control a player, which comes up a lot as well. So, for example, I will let you know this. This will actually help you as a blue farm player. So, if someone goes to, say, someone casts a spell,
Hmm.
and then someone tries to counter that spell, and that first player decides to take okay, in response, I'm gonna go fetch this land, obviously so they can counter, right? You can cast Op Agent and control them while they search, which also includes revealing their hand, and if they have any instant speed stuff, you can counter spell.
I don't know if that's how it works
It
because
literally says you control target opponent while you control an opponent while they search their library.
right, but the problem is you don't have priority while you're in the middle of an ability. So like if you're fetching a card, you can't cast a spell while you
That's
are
fair.
searching your library. You get priority after the ability resolves.
But you can, however, still reveal their hand.
I don't think you can do that either.
You
Because
can. I talked with a judge at the Land Go event, and
oh,
we had a lengthy discussion because you do control the player. You can reveal information because you're
okay.
controlling.
So Op Agent specifically is the only card that works like this. All other hidden information almost you have to like treat it properly. That's so weird.
Right. You could get probe and you can't reveal, but you can just tell people. But
Okay.
because this says you control the player, you can just lay their cards on the table while you tutor.
Okay, so you control the player, so you can concede for them too, right?
I don't know about that. Well, I mean, if you can't counter a spell while tutoring, I'm sure you can, concede.
Well, you can concede at any time.
I don't know. I mean, you could probably tap their
Argue
land
that.
because I'm pretty sure tapping lands doesn't use the stack.
I don't think it works that way. I was just joking. Okay, so anyway, Ranger Captain. We all know what that does. It's sacrifice non silence on a stake. Non for just non creature spells. One white 3/3, and you get to find yourself a nice 1/1, which actually is really good in this deck because you can go get Carrion Feeder or Basura Seer or
Or
um
walking ballista.
yeah, or Ballista or Esper Sentinel. So that is really good.
Yep.
Next is Recruiter of the Guard. So this is just a creature tutor. 2 and a white for 1/1. When it ETBs, you search for a creature card with toughness 2 or less. And this is like Ranger Captain. This is going to go find all your combo things because it gets Samwise, it gets Golem. It doesn't get Boromir, but it can also get all your Drain
Yep. They could
creatures as
also
well.
get
Yeah.
Bowmaster. It could get Op Agent. It could
Hmm.
get Solitude. It could get Ballista, Archivist. It could get Timna.
Yeah. There's not a lot of cards in your deck that it doesn't get, I guess. So maybe we should talk about those. Next up, we have Timna, which is just Timna.
Yep,
Draws
everyone
cards.
knows what Timna does.
Yeah, everyone knows what Timna does. Draenei Lonbala. This is a 1 white black 3/4. Flying Vigilance activated abilities of creatures opponent's controls can't be activated. And it has all activated abilities of all creatures your opponent's controls, and you can spend mana as those mana any color to activate those abilities. Has there ever been a time when you've had a relevant um, thing
Yep,
to do with this?
I had a Thrasios.
Hmm.
So basically, they've had Thrasios, they've had Kinnan. There was a Dauntless Dismantler,
Hmm.
and because my commander was out, I could sack the Drana with a Dauntless Dismantler and then still have a Drana.
Right.
I had a Kenrith at one point, which was interesting. Granted, I don't produce as much mana as Kenrith does, but it was still nice to be able to, spin top with the Thrasios. It's
Yeah.
mostly there to stop the other players from doing things because one of the biggest things um, that the cEDH decks have is activate as a creature. So if you play this against Kinnan, Kinnan can't do anything. I will also note that it stops people trying to do walking ballista. However, what it also does, for example, right, someone will try to eat a walking ballista, or they'll eat something with their Agathas, right? Put a moment counter on one of their creatures.
Hmm.
I have a Adrenaline Vala. Now I have that ability, and if I can make infinite mana, I can just funnel it into Drana and then kill the table.
Right. Right. That
It
makes sense.
also stops to say it stops Kenrith.
To say
It stop-
Kinnan Kenrith. Yeah.
Yeah, it stops a good bit of things people want to do. I haven't seen it come up, but they can also, I can stop Boromir, like other people's Boromir, if I need
Right.
to. Or if I need like that extra tempt, I can just use her to sack, and I'll have a temp trigger because I'm using the Boromir, their Boromir ability to give me a tempt.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. So next up we have Yawgmoth Grand Physician. This is another sacrifice outlet, but notably this is also going to draw you cards for every time you sacrifice. So this is a 2 black, so 4 mana total for a 2/4 legendary human cleric. It's got protection from humans, and then you can pay a life, and sacrifice another creature. Put a -1/-1 counter on up to one target creature, and draw a card. And then you can pay double black and discard a card to proliferate.
So this card is really flexible with what it wants to do. It 100% blocks Timna and half the creatures in the format.
Hmm.
Like someone will try to swing at me with a Ranger Captain, right? And I'm like, cool, Yawgmoth. Or
And
they'll
then you can
try to
just kill it too.
or they'll swing with like a Dauntless Dismantler or like a Draineth Match. They'll try to like value get in, and they can't because protection from humans. Um, I've also
Right.
had the opportunity. This was a while ago, and I don't think it'll ever happen again. But I had a bunch of cards in hand, and I discarded a bunch to proliferate their bird encounters on their One Ring, so they
Hmm.
would die.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or I did that, and then another time I proliferated their One Ring in response to them trying to draw cards, so they would draw themselves out.
Oh, that's nasty.
Because trigger on the stack, uh, on pawn resolution, it checks for how many bird encounters is on it. So I'm like, do you have 4 cards in your library? Oh, do you
Ah,
have 4 bird encounters? I'll discard 2 cards and make you draw 6 cards.
that'll do it. Okay. Uh, Next up we have Sidisi Undead Vizier. So this is like just basically another tutor. Oh, but this can. Oh, does this work how I think it does with temp mechanics? You can kind of chain tutor with this, huh?
Yep, I was just about to get to that. So if I have enough mana, what I like to do is I'll cast Sidisi.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't have Sam, I'll tutor for Sam, and he'll exploit himself. The
Right.
Since the exploit is not a target, it just says sack a creature, I can respond to the exploit trigger.
Mm-hmm.
And once the tutor resolves, because the tutoring is at sorcery speed, so I have to resolve the tutor first, and then the token will be made. ETB trigger, I can flash out Sam. Since he's already legendary right now, I can ETB trigger, get Sidisi back to my hand, temp trigger, temp Sidisi, exploit Sidisi a second time to get another tutor, Once that tutor resolves, the second cEDH will come into play, I guess third cEDH, and then that one will exploit Sam, and then make Sam legendary, put Sam back in hand, and from then I've tutored like 3 times.
Right.
And then if I can tutor any more than that, which is why we'll get to the instance, that's why sacrifice is in the deck, so I can sack the cEDH token to sacrifice and just recast the DC if I need to.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, we can just tutor for wins. Like, cEDH is a great card. 5 mana is steep. We might be looking at ways to, or looking at other lines to, try to minimize that. But for right now, I love cEDH.
Yeah, so for those that don't know, it is 3 black for a 4/6 zombie Naga legendary creature with Death Touch and Exploit. Whenever the creature enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a creature, and whenever it exploits a creature, you may search your library for a card, put it in your hand, then shuffle your library.
Yeah, at
Okay.
worst case scenario, we have with our commander out 2 demonic tutors for 5 mana.
Yeah, and that's just, I mean, it's not great, but that's fine.
Yeah, there's nothing to sneeze at. I mean, if we have like another creature that we can sack to the second cEDH, we also just have like a sack fodder for like a culling the week or a sacrifice to, I'll get like a lotus if I need mana. I'll get like a lotus petal and a sacrifice, and I'll just cast those 2 to do something. But
Right.
worst case scenario, he's 2 demonic tutors for 5 mana, which
It's good.
it's
Really
about
good.
the same as casting 2 demonic tutors in general.
Yeah. All right. So next up we have Solitude, and this is basically just free removal for you. So 3 white for a elemental incarnation, 3/2 with flash, lifelink, and when it ETBs, exile up to 1 other target creature. The creature's controller gains life equal to its power, and it has Evoke where you can exile a white card from your hand. Is there anything else that we're doing with this besides having it be like a free path to exile, basically?
If I have the mana, I'll try to flash in Sam as well, so I can make him legendary in response to his ETB trigger. And then when he dies, I'll have another Solitude, which isn't bad. I've had to do that a couple times, but for the most part, it is just free removal to deal with creatures if necessary. Like I'll on Soul Sunset Solitude, like Magistrate, or I'll Solitude and Abatement. Solitude a Crom in response to them trying to kill me.
Yeah. Okay. So next up we have our sorcery package. And I won't spend too long on these because we already talked about Lively Dirge. We have Demonic Tutor and Diabolic Intent, both of which just search a card into our hand, but Diabolic Intent, you have to sacrifice a creature as well. We talked about Bitter Ordeal already. And then we get to some of the more interesting ones. I guess I'll throw Beseech the Mirror also in with Demonic and Diabolic. It makes sense in your deck because most of your, a lot of your pieces are 2 or more mana, like the other half of it. So Beseech the Mirror is totally fine. Talk to us about Sevinne's Reclamation.
Sevinne's is great. It's kind of so basically I look at it the same way a blue farm looks at Sevinne's Reclamation. It's just, oh no, you stopped my win attempt. I'll try again.
Yeah,
and now
or if that gets stopped, I try again.
Basically, it's like, oh, I cast this Sevinne's Rec to try to win again, and you kind of, oh no, I'll flash it back and try to win harder.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much all it is. We have very little recursion because we usually don't care about our graveyard. But when we can use it, we will. I mean, it also helps if I just need to, let's say, get back stack pieces or value pieces. Destroyed all artifacts or enchantments. I need to get back my Necropotence and Grafdigger's Cage. I can just do that.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense.
Yeah, it's basically the same way Blue Farm looks at Sevinne's.
Yeah, you're just getting back your combo pieces.
Yeah, I'll even entomb it if I have enough stuff in break.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is your instance. We have Calling the Weak for mana, Dark Ritual for mana, Enlightened Tutor. I'm just going to go rapid fire on these because a lot of them are fairly standard. Enlightened Tutor to search an artifact or enchantment to the top, Entomb to put something in grave, Path to exile stuff, Sacrifice for mana, and of course you talked a little bit about how it works well with cEDH. Silence for both our combo turns and to sometimes stop other players, right?
Yep.
Swords as another path, like another exile effect. Vamp tutor to tutor, and then we're actually on ad nauseum, and that does make sense because we're looking at the curve for this list, and it's fairly low. A lot of your combo pieces are not that much mana, like Boromir's 3 mana, Samwise is 2, Golem's 2. The sack outlets are like 1 or 2, so.
Yeah, we don't really need to go that deep as well. Like a lot of Blue Farmer Rockside decks, they need to go really deep because they need a lot of mana and then a lot of different pieces to try to win. We're like, I can literally just value ad nos, and then like, cool, I get these 3 creatures, I'm good.
Yeah, very good.
Also to run it back on sacrifice, there's a lot of flex with sacrifice. Where if you want to, like you have like a black open, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can flash in Solitude by evoking a card. ETB
Right.
trigger, cast sacrifice, stacking him. You'll still get the exile, but you could also use that since he's 5 CMC to cast Adnos.
Right. Right.
So you could sacrifice the one of them into an Adnos, or you could sacrifice him into a Sidisi if it's on your turn. There's like things you could do if you need the mana. Also, you could do it to any one of your larger legendary creatures, like I guess Drana, Timna, Combal, and
Yawgmoth.
Yawgmoth.
Yeah.
Yeah, Yawgmoth. So like it's 1 for 4 for those, and then it's like it is like I said for mana, but there's a lot of flex. It's not just like hard. I'm gonna just. It's not the same way you would use it as a culling the weak.
Right.
You actually have to use like a little bit of brain power for that one. Because it
Right.
sucks if you try like culling the weak or sacrifice a
One.
bowmaster.
Yeah, it's not going to do anything.
No, it's just 1 for 2. It's like the shittiest soul ring ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So next up is our artifact suite, and this is semi-standard. I'm gonna just rapid fire the ones that everybody knows: Chrome Mox, Jeweled Lotus, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, Mox Amber, Mox Diamond, Mox Opal, Mana Vault, Soul Ring. I think those were all the Arcane Signet as well, and Wishclaw Talisman. Those are probably all the ones that most people just kind of know about. They all
And
are
the
just
One Ring.
yeah, and the One Ring. They're all just efficient, like mana producing or Wishclaw tutors and One Ring draws. Um, let's take a look at some of the other ones. I see you're on Altar the Brood, and this is basically just an infinite outlet, also, right? Where you make infinite creatures, and then you can just
Just mill everyone out. It is the
yeah.
cheapest win con in the deck. And I was off of it for a while, but after I'm in an Orzhov Discord and we have our own channel deck, and talking to the guys, like it started making a lot of sense. Like, yeah, I could just demonic tutor for this 1-drop, and it'd be a lot easier than trying to tutor for like a 3-drop or a 4-drop creature to get there.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's
So
very easy to cast. You can have it come down on turn 1. It doesn't really do anything. No one really panics, and then you just mill everybody out.
right, I don't really want to cast it turn 1 because it just feeds breach too much.
Oh yeah.
Pretty much only trying to cast it when I'm trying to win, because you could, if someone plays an Altar of the Brood, you could force them to feed it by like passing their creature, or if they have a Forbidden Orchard, you keep giving them 1/1s. You could keep feeding it, and then that feeds the Breach or Savine's Reclamation. So
Right.
I don't like playing it too early. It is I don't think you play the Altar. You only play Altar when you have like Loop on board.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, yeah, because you don't care about having stuff in your graveyard, which is weird.
It doesn't mill me either, which is the best part.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, I forgot about that. Yeah, but yeah, you don't want to feed your opponent's graveyards. That makes complete sense. Okay, and then next up we have Grafdigger's Cage. So yeah, we talked about this earlier. There's a stacks piece where creature cards can't ETB from graveyards or libraries, and we can't cast cards in graveyards or libraries. Stops Savines, stops Breach. stops Kinnan, stops Sisei. Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know what else we can really say about it. It's just a really good card.
It doesn't really stop our strategy because, like I said, we're not really reanimating anything.
Right, and even Sam doesn't bring it from graveyard to battlefield. He goes from graveyard to hand, so he doesn't even care.
Yeah, same thing with Gollum. They just put from grave to hand.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Skull Clamp, which you talked about earlier, how it's just a okay draw engine for you. It's going to cost you
Yeah,
mana each time, which is a little
so
rough.
if we have Relic of Legends, we just
Oh,
and
yeah.
we have the loop, we can just draw the deck instead of casting anything. Like we don't have to tutor. We could just I call sack, float a mana, get another one, I'll equip, and then sack it, and then just keep drawing 2 cards. So unless there's a Bowmaster out, we don't really care. It's also just really cheap, and depending on the hand, we might pitch it to a gemstone.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
Depends, but it's just cheap draw, right? So
Yeah.
someone does a like I can pitch certain cards to it. Like if I wanted to die, like what's it called? Fasir's here. I can pitch a Sam to it, 2/1.
Yeah.
I can pitch a Golem to it because it's a 3/1.
Yeah, a
We
lot
can
of your
kill
cards are
Lotho
1/1.
because we'll just get a Lotho again. If I don't care about the drain at the moment, I can just pitch the Zulaport Cutthroat.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Our Bowmasters if we're really in a really tight spot.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, you could get rid of that if you wanted. Okay. We talked about Soul Cauldron already. I guess Altar of Dimension is the same kind of thing of Altar of the Brood, but it is a sacrifice outlet as well, which is just
Yeah, it's a
good.
2-for-1.
Yeah, that makes sense. Blasting Station, same thing, but instead of milling, we are dealing a damage. So it's a 3-mana artifact, tap sacrifice creature, it deals 1 damage target creature player, and whenever creature comes into play, you may untap Blasting Station. Makes complete sense. Mirage Mirror we
I
talked
will
about
say
already. Yeah.
I will say I have punted a couple times because I keep forgetting it's not a grinding station that costs 2 mana,
Oh yeah.
and it just
Yeah.
makes me mad.
Yeah, it's a 3 mana creature, not a 2. Okay, so next up is Mirage Mirror, which we talked about. Relic of Legends, which we have talked about extensively. The cards are really good in your deck because you keep making so Relic of Legends, 3-mana artifact with tap, add 1 mana of any color. And you can also tap and untap legendary creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. This is great with our ring tempting strategy where we're making a bunch of like tokens that'll come in, they'll die, but in between their triggers, we can tap them for 1 mana of any color, and that'll just give us infinite mana if we're going through that loop.
Which is really funny if we have a drawn on Linvala out, because if we have the loop, we could just use and like say there's a Sithe
Yeah.
or a Kin. I don't have that many humans, and my humans are not the win con, so
Right. Right. Yeah, you can just go through your entire deck with either one of those things on board.
those are a what's it called? A Thrasios out as well.
Gracias,
So
yep. That'll do it too.
people really underestimate Relic of Legends. No one ever counters it. No one blows it up. And I've seen a braids get thrown around. And I'm like, all right, cool. You'll target that thing and not me that says I have infinite mana on my turn.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and then we talked about the One Ring already. This is just a draw engine and a color combination that lacks those overall, so One Ring is a good option. Blind Obedience, same reason as Dauntless Dismantler. We want our opponent's artifacts and creatures coming in tapped. That's just good, mainly artifacts. And Extort, I imagine, comes in relevant sometimes because I imagine in this deck, a lot of times you're going to end up with extra mana that you can't really do anything with.
I can also use it as a win con. So, like I said, if I have a sack outlet and say I'm in a Lotus Petal, I can sack the Lotus Petal for a mana, sack Sam, get Lotus Petal back, recast the Lotus Petal, extort it. Technically, you can do the same thing with like a Mox Amber or a Mox Opal if you have the Metalcraft, and if you have specifically Bartholomew because he sacks an artifact as well.
Right.
So since he sacks an artifact and creature, I can use him and a Sam and like any of my rocks that tap for there's 0 cost. I tap for a mana, and I can make either infinite mana or infinite extort, and just kill the table with that instead of doing things. However, you do run the risk of like getting, force negation or fierce guardianship on the
Mind
rock
break trap.
cast or mind break
Yeah.
trap especially. That would suck. But I mean, it's a flexible line. So it does more than just say you're not playing the game is a potential win con for me. So
Hmm. Right.
that's why I run it.
Yeah, and it's kind of an outlet also, I think, in when Tivits run this card, if they go with like Hullbreaker Horror and they go infinite, and then they can extort all their
Oh
mana rocks to win.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Call of the Ring. We already talked about this one, explained what it did. This goes really well with Viserys here, and it goes really well in general if you're comboing out with your tempting ring creatures, because you can just pay 2 life a bunch and draw a bunch of cards.
Even if
Um,
you're not comboing out, it's just good value because if you have another creature out, you can tempt a random creature you have to draw to, or to draw a card. And if
yeah,
it's like a creature that people are going to try to get rid of, like a ranger captain.
yeah, you might as well.
Yeah, right. So if you have your commander and you have like random creatures like a bowmaster, someone's going to try to get rid of, or an esper sentinel, someone's going to try to get rid of because they don't want you to have a card draw. You can tempt that until you get a tempt creature, and then no one's pretty much going to want to care about touching your board because they can't,
Right,
or they can, but it wouldn't matter. So you just
right,
negate anyone's interaction,
yeah,
which is the funniest part about this deck.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Next up, we have the Meat Hood Massacre. X black black legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each creature gets -X till end of turn. And then whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses a life. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. This makes perfect sense because you can use this to wipe like a inconvenient board when you want to, and when you want this to just be a drain outlet, you can just cast it for 2 black, and you don't have to put anything into X.
So I've had extra mana when casting it, but no sack outlet. So what I've done is I've casted it on 1 while
Hmm.
Sam was out, and it kills Sam because he's a 2/1. But I just put him back to hand and then recast him, and then state based action, everyone dies because.
Right, right, because there's 2 legendaries. Yeah. Okay.
So it's very versatile. Plus, it gets around stuff like Void Winnower.
Hmm.
They like if I already have the stuff and they're like, well, Gideon will be like, I'll do this Void Winnower, and then you can't, cast your combo pieces. I'm like, you right, but this meat hook is technically a 3 CMC on the stack.
Right, 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 right.
And then at that point they just get kind of butthurt.
Yeah, yeah, I can see that.
Especially if I have no other mana to do, and I was like, cool, I'm gonna cast this Dark Ritual Culling the Weak, and I would put everything I have into this meat hook to blow everyone out of the water. Because I can rebuild. I don't care. But that's why we have so much redundancy. We do not really care about board wipes except when our commander dies, and then,
Hmm.
then it begins to get slightly harder.
Right.
But you do what you gotta do sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is just a solid card overall. Okay. Next up is Necropotence. This is a card that we are seeing play in Blue Farm nowadays. I'm on it, and it's certainly very good.
It wasn't in
Um,
there before?
Necropotence I put in, I think, last month. Eh,
Interesting. I
or
always
meh.
assumed you guys were on Necropotence because it's card draw or card
um,
advantage.
it was kind of there's a guy in the Blue Farm Discord called Necro Guy that has been pushing it for a while, but it took some time for it to really go mainstream. But I would say it's core now. Um, yeah, I think most blue farms are on this at this point. It's just really strong. And the reason that's been pushed over into core is because it combos with both Born Upon a Wind and Final Fortune. Um, and it actually
Yeah, that's fair.
draws cards at a more efficient rate than Adnos does, which is kind of insane, right?
Yeah, because you can, unless you're just hitting land after land with the Adnos, you're kind of getting like maybe 5 to 10 cards,
Yeah,
but you're
because like
taking like double the
not
life.
yeah, with Nas your average CMC is like 1.3 or something, 1.5. So just based off statistics, Necropotence is going to draw you more cards.
Right. Plus, if you
Yeah.
have like a Born Upon the Wind, or if you run Emergent Zone, then you could just like if you're at high enough life total, you could like, cool, I'm gonna go 30 deep and try to win right now.
Right. Right.
Which, if your deck is the right way, you should be able to. Especially if all you did, you untapped, you have your mana. It's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna crack this Emergent Zone. Basically, costs you 1 mana.
Yeah.
Necropotence, good end step.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Yeah, Necropotence makes a lot of sense. Again, in this color combination where we are lacking draw engines, and we don't care about exiling cards from our graveyard that much because we have so many creatures that kind of do the same thing with like the Ring Tempting or the Sack Outlet or the Drain. We don't mind if we get rid of certain cards. Yeah. So next up is Touch the Spirit Realm. 2 and a white for an enchantment. When it ETBs, exile up to 1 target creature or artifact until it leaves the battlefield, but no one does that. What we all do is pay 1 and a white, discard it, exile up to 1 artifact. Sorry, exile target artifact or creature, and return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. This is going to get rid of uncounterably, more or less uncounterably, is going to get rid of those pesky like Grand Abolishers, Sisseys, yeah, like.
And mostly it's
Everything.
get rid of stacks pieces that I'm worried about. Because honestly,
Yeah.
I don't really care about what other people are doing unless they're winning the game. And this will not really do anything to a Grand Abolisher unless like it was a value Grand Abolisher. And then, if I'm the last person before that person's turn, I'm like, all right, cool, on my
Yeah.
step, I will, yeah, right. So
Right.
it feels bad, but it's mostly there to just get rid of problems, right? Like, I see someone's going to try to win with this card, or I'll touch the Spirit Realm someone's Basalt Monolith, like if they're in Kinnan, or I'll touch their One Ring so they can't draw cards, or I'll touch their Crom. It's a way for me to not get smacked to death and
Right.
just a few problems. Like, mostly I care about is either Draineth Magistrate or Op Agent. Aside from
Right.
that, I really don't care. Like, I may touch a Talion because half my deck is 2 drops. So
Yeah. Yeah. So this is
plus
just
the
a
fact that
way.
it's a channel, it's not a cast. It gets around Rustic Study, Mystical Mora, and
Yeah, it can't be countered.
Prompt.
Right. Usually.
Yeah, it could be Deflecting Swatted, which would suck, but
Right. Okay. Next up is Smothering Tide. This is kind of a super staple at this point. This card's so darn good. It's gonna make you a bunch of treasures, and honestly, in your deck, people are probably not even gonna care. You know what I mean? Like,
nope,
they're
no one
just gonna
cares
give you
about
treasures.
which is great.
Yeah.
Would love to hard cast a Solitude.
Yeah.
Give me more lifelinky blockers.
Yeah. Treble Impairs, we already talked about. An opponent would begin an extra turn, they skip it. If an opponent attacks you with 2 creatures, 2 or more, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. So this is like Crom, Mastermind, plus turn skip, plus if they attack you with 2 or more things, like.
No one's going to be able to Final Fortune, and I love the fact that no one reads it, so they're going to cast Final Fortune into it. And then
Yeah.
it says they skip that turn, right? So they technically still go to that turn, so they just lose.
Huh. I thought Final Fortune was a end step trigger, so if they never get the trigger, I don't think they just lose.
I'm pretty sure skipping the turn, you still have to. I don't know. I have to judge about that. But
yeah, if anyone of y'all know in the comments, let us know if y'all know how that interaction works, because I honestly don't.
Either way,
yeah, either way, it's really good. Yeah. Okay. All right, so we're almost wrapped up. We're gonna get to your land base. You're on 28 lands, which makes a lot of sense. I'm on 27 in Blue Farm, and I think 28 is about where most decks are in general. This looks fairly standard. You're on a bunch of fetches, shocks. I don't see any duels, but that's probably just because they're.
I have a scrub land.
We'd have a duel. Yeah, they're just expensive, and honestly, I don't think in this deck you really even care that much about your life total.
We don't care about life total too much, but we do care about pips. So if you look at the land base, I have almost every available 5 color land. The only one that is of note that I would say is the Plaza of Heroes.
Ah, okay. So yeah, so really quick, I guess let's talk about the other lands really fast. I just want to point out, you are on Tarnished Citadel, which we don't see in most decks, and like that's kind of a deep cut. Like, but you just don't care about life that much and want to prioritize the correct color generation that much to where it it's worth a slot.
Basically.
Okay. Anyway, yeah, back to Plaza of Heroes. So this is a land. I imagine most people listening probably haven't heard of this before. It's a rare land with tap and non-basic, of course. Tap, add colorless. Uh, it has okay, so it has 4 abilities. One of them is tap to add colorless. Another one is tap to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a legendary spell. And then its third ability is tap, add 1 mana of any color among legendary permanents you control. And then its last ability is 3 tap, exile Plaza of Heroes. Target legendary creature gains hexproof and indestructible till end of turn. So yeah, talk to us a little bit about Plaza of Heroes.
So I was hesitant to run it because I didn't know exactly how relevant the tapping for color was going to be able to come up.
Hmm.
It is never coming out of the deck. Let me tell you, it never hurts, right?
Yeah.
So usually I'm not like double pip heavy too much. So at
Hmm.
the very least, if I have another land that taps for a color, I think this is perfectly fine. Turn one, I'll use this. Turn one, Soul Ring, and then turn two, use this, and with my other land to cast my commander. And at that point, I'm only in 2 colors, so this taps for everything, right?
Right.
This also, I will say, could also, I mean, if the One Ring had a color, this could tap and cast the One Ring. It casts the legendary enchantment, Meathook Massacre.
Hmm.
What other legendary spells do I have? Don't think that's really it. I mean, Soul Cauldron isn't a color dependent thing, but yeah, there's a lot of legendaries in the deck. So Plaza of Heroes will more or less always be turned on. I've never seen it not turned on.
Hmm.
It hasn't come up where I needed to exile it to give target creature hexproof and indestructible, but obviously that last part is for our commander,
Right.
because that's the only creature we really care about the most.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, this deck is very commander dependent, I will say.
Right.
Aside from that, the only other land that I believe people would probably want to hear about is I'm probably not silent clearing. That's just a horizon land that pings you when you tap for color, and you can pay 1 second to draw a card. That's standard. Shadowy Backstreet though is the surveil land from Murders in Karlov Manor.
Ah, I see it. Yes.
Yeah, so that is another tutorable land that we
Hmm.
can use off of our fetches.
Hmm.
Not the Prismatic Vista, but we have, let's see, I think about 5 fetches. With one, we have Marsh Flash, Arid Mesa, Bloodstained, and Polluted Delta.
Right.
So we have 4 fetches, 5 including the Prismatic,
Hmm.
and yeah, we and Shadowy Backstreet is really good if you don't have a turn one play, quote unquote. And you want to, but you have a fetch. It's really good to do this in response to someone doing something, especially if you can swing with like a Ragavan or just on someone's end step. It's basically an instant speed time walk because you get to look at the top card, and if you don't like it, you just bin it. And if you
Right.
do like it, you have like a reanimate thing, or you have your lively dirge, or some people are on like the animate enchantments, right? You can do that and bin the card, and then next turn, oh, cool, I don't have to cast this 5 drop. I'll just pay 2, reanimate it, and then you're good. Or
Right.
if you have Soul Cauldron, right, you could to where you vamp tutor
Hmm.
uh, in response to the fetch or in response to the ETB trigger. You can vamp tutor to the top a card you want to eat with Soul Cauldron, and then you just bin it off the surveil trigger.
Right. Yeah. So very flexible. This surveil ability is a lot more flexible than it looks at
Yeah.
first
Plus,
glance.
it's fetchable. It doesn't hurt you. Like early game, it's great. I will say, if it's in your starting hand, it feels kind of bad. But that's why we play Mox Diamond.
Right. Okay.
So the other land, I don't think anyone really cares about.
We do have Emergence Zone, which is relevant with Necropotence.
This is true. This is true.
Agonjo doubles as a removal spell, where
Yep.
you and it doesn't have to be attacking you.
Nope.
It just any attacking or blocking creatures is probably a good way to get rid of Timnas and Kroms.
Yep.
Takanuma, I think, is actually worth mentioning because it can get you back. It's very easy for you for this deck to put whatever creatures in the bin, and then you can just grab whatever creature you want back with Takanuma.
Right. I misplayed in a game earlier where I could have sacked my Dauntless Dismantler and then Takanuma to get it back into my hand and just recast the Dauntless Dismantler.
Mm-hmm.
But that is something you can do because we just kill our own stuff, and because it puts it back in our hand, it gets around stuff like Grafdigger's Cage.
Yeah. Okay. I think that'll do it for our deck tech. There is a couple more things we've got in the episode. So next up, are there any shout outs or anything else you'd like to say about the deck? Now is the time.
Let's see. So things we have. I guess I'll talk about like the considered list. I'll name off a couple cards I think, depending on how you build it, is pretty useful. As far as lands go, Shizo's Death Storehouse, it just gives the creature fear or intimidate. Like, yeah, it gives fear, so it can't be blocked by except by artifact and black creatures. So that might come up. I ran Blood Cheese for a minute, but since I wasn't running Mindcrank, it just was kind of like a annoying card for my opponents. They could easily just play around it. So that's why I cut it.
Right.
Doffy wasn't really doing anything to help me win the game. It was just like another Draith Magistrate, basically. So we
Right.
cut that. Luris is a nombo with the Grafdigger's Cage, so we just cut that. Pitiless Carnage, I was on for a hot minute until I realized it's not that great. We don't
Fair.
produce enough of a board because we don't have anything doubling our token generation. So we can't just make like a huge board and then sack it all to draw those cards. The most you would do is sack your lands in a desperate attempt to draw something. In which case, you might as well just run add-ons.
Right. And this also gets hated on by Bowmaster quite a bit. So
Yeah, that is true. Out of the Dawn Sky is an interesting tech that I've seen a few other people run. I just personally feel like it does nothing. Because it requires too much setup. And if I'm doing that much setup, I would just like to win the game.
that's very fair. Yeah.
It is also 5 mana. So granted, it's a 5 mana, 5/4 vigilance flying blocker, but it's more or less just going to get path instead
It's
of
slow.
skill. It's
Yeah.
slow. Yeah, it's going to get Solitude. It's going to get swords before it can die. So it's not useful.
I would agree. Yeah.
Abdul is being considered at the moment because it's a non-commander dependent win con. You know, like an Entombment, Necromancy, Animate Dead, or Dance of the Dead it, and then make infinite dudes, get infinite pings if I have a drain out, or instant speed, make infinite dudes on someone's end step, and then go for the swing.
Right.
So, I am considering, however, a card from MH3. I think it's interesting. I think it might have a spot in here. I will see if I can find the card.
Is,
All right, so
is it the White Flare?
no, I don't like the white flare. Screw that card.
Okay.
I wanted it to be a white silence, and Wizards lied to me. So this is a creature. Shil Gengar, Sire of Famine, is a 3/2 black, 6/6 flyer, legendary
Yeah.
creature, Elder Demon. Again, as flying, it has sack another creature, create a blood token. Now, blood token is pay 1 mana, discard a card, sacrifice this artifact, draw a card.
Mm-hmm.
So it has sack another creature, create a blood token. If you sacrifice an angel this way, create a number of blood tokens equal to its toughness instead. That's not really going to come up too much. It doesn't matter, especially when we can just infinitely sack a single thing, right?
Right.
But it does have this interesting little part at the end that says pay 3 hybrid Orzhov mana. So pay 3 white or 3 black or any combination. Sack 6 blood tokens. Return each creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Those creatures are vampires in addition to the other types. Now, finality counters, for those who don't know, say basically if this creature would leave the battlefield for any reason, death, exile, return to hand, they just get exiled instead. So it's not the greatest reanimator, but it is very cheap. And if we're just trying to reanimate a drain, it's fantastic. Also, it makes a lot of value
Hmm.
since, again, with Relic of Legends, this is another draw outlet, basically.
Right.
So if plus we have spare mana lying around, we could just use this to discard draw. Again, we don't care about our grave, so we're just trying to loot for a specific card to win the game.
Okay.
And it's a legendary 6/6 for 5 that says I can block pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, it does do that. I mean, I don't think a lot of Tivets are going to be swinging at you, but
I mean, I'm usually the only person they can swing at because I don't have flyers, and because I'm black, I'm the other likely target to have Adnaz. So
which
I'm
you
a free
do.
I'm a
But
free
yeah.
swing. Yeah. To be fair, I am on Adnaz, but I'm basically a free swing, and this would be like no, because they're not going to try to swing at someone who has a Crom. Because if they can pay the ward, they'll just lightning bolt it and it dies.
Right.
Um, or they might have more flyers, right, that they can block with.
Right.
So I want to test this card out. I think it'll be pretty fun. If not, we'll stick to what we got. The only other card I want to talk about. Oh yeah, there's 2 cards. Aven Interrupter.
Hmm.
If you are a much slower deck, I think this is the counter spell for you because it does not counter a spell. It removes a spell on the stack, and it says breach and breach lines just don't work as well because you have to pay 2 more per cast. So it shuts off breach with lines on diamond brain freeze because you're not going to be able to net positive in order to do your thing.
Right.
So it's just a static stacks piece, and it exiles like a big spell off the stack. Someone's trying to cast a Kinnon's trying to cast a Void Winnower. Someone's trying to cast an Overloaded Psych Rift. Someone's trying to cast Emil or Dockside. You can exile it, and they have to wait a whole other turn and cast at sorcery speed. So honestly, this is just great to hit with a Demonic Consultation
Hmm.
or Tainted because then they can't stack it how they want to with their Thassa trigger.
Hmm.
Because I have to do it at sorcery speeds, which is much riskier to do.
Right.
So I was running this for a while, but I'm still of the mind as we are not the police, and this is a police card. So
Right.
I guess if you're like a white blue deck, or if you're an Esper deck, I would probably run this because you can't just. This is another counterspell that's on a 2/2 flying body that has flash.
Yeah, it's good. It's definitely a
Yeah.
good card.
The other card is, I think, a card that should never have been printed. It is from Unfinity, and it is Saw in Half.
Oh God.
Yeah, so in casual, right? There's a card, Mondrak, that is basically Anointed Procession on a creature.
Right.
Saw in Half with that and the commander out, like, makes you a couple thousand tokens at instant speed. I did the math already. You make like a couple thousand tokens at instant speed if you have like this and an extra mana. So 4 mana total at instant speed if you have Mondrak and your commander out. You can do it on someone's end step and be like, well, I'm going to spawn half this Mondrak. And then after those triggers resolve, I'm going to sack the last Mondrak to one of the non-legendary Mondraks. And then I'm going to make enough to kill everyone with combat. Also, you can use this to, technically this can also be a win con if you really like Sonhaf. Because if you have a Drain and you have a Golem or a Sam out, you can Sonhaf the creature, and it'll make 2 legendary copies. And then at that point, you just state-based action kill the table.
Right. And you could even do this on your you could do this on your commander, right? And then you can get
You can get a lot of. You can get you can make infinite tokens at that point because you'll have 2 commanders.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you'll have the legendary No, they.
No, it works exactly how you're thinking. You sawn half the commander, you'll get two legendary commanders.
They'll both
One
die.
will die because they
One will
face
die.
action,
Sorry.
but the other one will see it, and then you'll have a non-legendary and a legendary uh, commander. Both of them are 2/2s now.
And then you can infinitely sack your non-legendary one.
No, they're both no, they're the legendary and non-legendary. So at that point, you basically just have an in-order procession effect at the table. And
Oh,
then if you have a loop like with a Boromir, you can make infinite Boromirs and then I guess swing for damage. So it's a flexible card. I cut it because it didn't ever really come up enough to be
yeah.
useful. But if you like the card and you want to fit it in the deck, there's definitely, I mean, if you're, I don't suggest anyone, net decks off of me. They should probably build it their own way and have fun with it.
Mhm.
But I mean, it's a funny card. It's really fun,
Yeah.
especially since we have Comball in the deck because you can Son have someone pivot, right? If you can pay the mana, or you can Son have someone Crom, and now you have two Croms,
Right.
or you can Son have their Dockside, and then
Yeah.
you get two Docksides.
Right.
So there's a lot of flex. There's a lot of cool, interesting things you can do with that card. Aside from that, it's just basic stuff that people should be running. Maybe not, like a Deadly Relic, Woe Strider, Containment Priest, Dam, March of Otherworldly Light, Francisco, Bastion of Remembrance. We had Bastion in the original list, but since Comball came out, that got yeeted out of there so fast.
Yeah.
Because Comball cannot be Swan Songed.
Right. And yeah, it can't be fierce or force of negation or.
It's on a 2/4 body that does so much more value. Sure, if it resolves ETBs and makes a 1/1, that's cool. I'd rather make 1/1s when everybody makes 1/1s. Because think
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah. The
Someone has a forbidden
scumballs.
orchard. Yeah, someone has a forbidden orchard. You also make the 1/1.
Yeah.
You now have free culling the weak fodder.
Okay. Yeah. So, were there any shout outs you'd like to give? Like an.
Uh, I guess shout out to David, who was also on Blue Farm. Shout out to Corbin. They were the guys I was at the invitational with. We shared
Mhm.
Airbnb.
Okay.
Really cool guys, really cool players. Who else? Santana, I believe he was on Kinnan. Shout out to all the judges, really. Like they were super
Yes.
cool. Um, Shout out to you, I guess, man. Give me the opportunity to come out here and talk about the deck since I see no one playing it, and the people I do see playing it are screwing up. it
That'll
just
probably
pains my
change
it just pains
once.
my soul when I see someone playing Ratadrabik and they are doing it all wrong. I'm like, no.
Yeah. Once this video comes out, we'll probably have a couple more people interested in the deck at least.
I mean, I hope so. Orzhov is pretty strong. We're not doing anything new as far as like the combos, right? The combo isn't new. Aristocrats has been a combo since Black White has been a thing.
Right.
Um, I personally think though that this commander and coupled with the Lord of the Rings set just made it so much more efficient that it is the best option out there, even if you're going for a go wide strategy or just a straight aristocrat strategy. Like a lot of people like doing Elos as a commander, um,
Hmm.
which is fine. You have a payoff in the command zone, but then you have a lot of setup. And then if someone gets rid of a piece, then you're like set back like a whole turn. Where our pieces just don't go away.
Hmm.
So that's my take on it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So very cool. Uh, Last thing we've got for you today is the spicy scale. If you check in that document I sent you, you will see the spicy scale. This will go all the way from 0, which is a bell pepper that has no skullable units, all the way up to 2 million with the Carolina Reaper. So we
Yeah.
would like to ask you, we as in me, because usually there's Samurai Dancer here, but he is sick. Um, where would you put your deck in terms of just spiciness from 0 to 2 million?
0 to 2 million. Good God. Honestly, spiciness. I don't know. I want to say about 500,000. Like it's not very spicy, but no one's really going to see it coming. And even though people will possibly know the lines, it's hard for them to interact with the line.
Yeah, so you would say maybe a habanero chocolate.
Yeah, somewhere around there. It's a cool deck. It's definitely not the fastest, but
Right.
I have terrified a Blue Farm player with Bitter Ordeal. They have literally said to me that I'm terrified of you. Like I'm fine if there's like 2 other Blue Farm players at the table. I'm good. I see you at the table, scared shitless. Which I felt was a huge honor considering like he's playing one of the best decks in the format.
Right, right. Yeah, I would concur. I would say this is yeah, about there. Not the absolute most crazy thing ever, because at the end of the day, it is aristocrats, which is an established archetype. But the way it does that is actually really cool. Like, there's ways to abuse the legend rule. We're kind of like using the ring tempts you in a very, very unique way that like most people wouldn't have thought about before learning about it. And I wouldn't have, this didn't even pop in my head. I was kind of wondering, I was looking at the deck list like, what does this do? And then yeah, the more I learned, I was like, oh, this is really cool actually.
There's a lot more than people give it credit for that it can do. Like I said, it's gotta be flexible and have an open mind. And the more people play, the more they'll find new interactions that they can do. Like there's a whole new plethora of interactions you could get off of just putting in Mirage Mirror.
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't have my Boromir, but you have a Boromir. That was easy.
Yeah. Yeah. You just make it a coffee.
Basically, and then because of I asked the judge at the tournament what would happen if I copied a creature. Marsmere basically just becomes the creature.
Right.
So I just have a Boromir that can sack, and then yeah, it's a creature now.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that will wrap us up for this episode. Thank you very, very much for coming on the show and telling us about this very interesting zombie commander. Um, Everyone else, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, maybe send this to a friend, and we will see you later.
Yeah, man, appreciate being on here.
Thanks so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, maybe send this to a friend, and a huge thank you to our patrons, JR and Matt Tang.